over a longer period. Okay? So the same events that happen here will happen here, but stretched out. And so on. Happen here, but stretched out. And so on, and so on, and so on. Okay? So they can actually trade according to the Fibonacci sequence. Right? Because time follows that sequence. Now, when I was a computer programmer, the very first little application I did had a calendar in it. And so I coded this calendar, and I thought, well, every 4 years is a leap year, right? Everyone think that? Every 4 years is a leap year. Well, I coded that way, and my program didn't work. It turns out it's very much more complicated than that, okay? Because an average year, so it's not all the same year, same each year, an average year is 365.2425, not 0.25, okay? So you have to divide it by 4, then divide it by 100, and divide it by 400 to make it right, okay? But even that is wrong, because that's only an average. That is why our calendars always fail. They always have to be reset every so often, okay? But we're talking about, every 400 years or so, it has to be reset. So we don't actually experience it very much because we don't live that long. But it turns out the Mayan calendar is exactly perfect because, again, time is cyclical, okay? And because the Mayan calendar is also cyclical, it keeps time perfectly. So it turns out that knowing how the future is made up of the present plus the past, okay, the system is actually building technology to take advantage of that, okay? They think if they alter the past, they can control the present and determine the future. Now, I don't know if anyone's come across this thing, the D-Wave computer. Anyone? The D-Wave quantum computer. Okay? So, it's essentially a big fridge, and it doesn't look like any computer, you're used to. All there is a bit of gubbins at the top, and it comes down to this thing in the middle of it. Okay? Does that look like an eye to you? Yeah? A one eye? Yeah. So, if you rearrange the letters on D-Wave, you get demon. Anyway, so I'm going to play a little from...
this is what they look like.
Guy.
There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths. Big metal boxes. About 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.
Remember,
at the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor in a conventional computer, It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In a conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours to make an effect in our world.
Notice he said at the end, to make an effect in our world. Okay, this is a computer, right? He didn't say to calculate this or figure this out, to make an effect in our world, right? So he's saying about parallel universes. I don't think there are parallel universes. I think there is only one. I think there are infinite probabilities there, okay? So for every moment, there's an infinity of probabilities, right, that could come into being, but only one of them gets collapsed into reality, okay? Now I think what they're doing is going back, pulling in a different probability into this world to have an effect. And that effect is a different probability is collapsed, so the past has changed, right, in their to their benefit, and we see sort of ripples, little ripples of changes because of that one event that's changed. So some of you might be aware of the Mandela effect. Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? Okay. The Mandela effect. Well, Mandela effect came about because a whole bunch of us, including me, remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison. And then a few months later he came out and became president of the country. So a load of us were like, what? Hang on, what's going on? I thought he died. Yeah? And then we started to realise there are other things in our reality that don't match up with our memory. Okay? Now, I've got Fruit of the Loom there, right? I remember it having a cornucopia. Right? In this reality, it never did. Never in their history did they ever have a cornucopia on their logo. Okay? Now, I was a big Star Wars fan. I even made a C-3PO fancy dress costume. So I pored over those pictures for hours and hours and hours on end. I don't remember C-3PO having a silver leg. Anybody else remember that? No. In my reality, he was all gold. Okay? The Monopoly Man. In this reality, he doesn't have a monocle. Okay? I remember him with a monocle, you know? And Looney Tunes, cartoons, yeah? But no, it's Looney Tunes. Yeah? Anybody remember Moonraker, the film Moonraker? Yeah? With Jaws. Yeah? There was a big joke in that film, right? Jaws meets this little blonde girl with pigtails, and he smiles at her, and he's got these big metal teeth, right? And she smiles back, and she's got braces on her teeth. They fall in love instantly and walk off into the sunset. Big joke. Now, she never had braces. Now that joke falls flat. There's no point to it now. But this is what I think they're actually, again, pulling in a different probability and collapsing that into reality to have an effect in our world. Turns out we can alter the past too. Okay, there's been experiments where they've got a random number generator that spits out a sequence of ones and zeros. Let's say it does 1,000 ones and zeros. 500, roughly 500 will be zeros, roughly 500 will be ones. But they got a meditator to meditate on producing more zeros and ones, okay, as the machine was churning them out, and the result was significantly more zeros and ones. But it's not even bound in time because they made the machine, do a run of numbers. They sealed the results in an envelope without looking at them, okay, and gave it to a meditator 10 years after the event. And he was to meditate on it producing more ones and zeros. When they opened it up, significantly more ones and zeros. Yeah? So we can, again, essentially reach into the past and make a change. It's not actually reaching into the past because there's no time, right? There is no time, right? We're affecting something in the past, but it's very difficult to get your head around. But when you're reaching into the past, right, it was always that way. You didn't change it, it was always that way. Okay. Very difficult concept to get. Right? But think of it this way. Have anybody manifested a car parking space?
Yeah, always.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Always.
Does it work?
Yeah,
Absolutely it works. Yeah? But maybe you get to think about how it works, right? Because you are part of a whole, okay? We are like cells in the human body. Yeah? If a cell in my hand suddenly went, oh, I need some salt. There's no salt here. Where's the salt? I need salt, I'm going to die. Where's the salt? Where's the salt? Right? Eventually that's going to percolate up to me. And I'm going to go, oh, I fancy anchovies tonight. Right? And, the cell's going to go, oh, what a coincidence. Yeah? I've been dying for some salt, and all this salt arrived. How does that happen? That's because the cell isn't separate from the rest of the body. And when that cell needs something, the whole body responds. Okay? We are not separate from this body. We are like cells making up a larger body. Okay? And when you need something, the body is going to respond. Okay? Now how this... Oops, have I been pressing this button? I don't know yet. Yeah. So, how this body responds... So when you ask for a car parking space, right, the person who's in that parking space... Well, let me step back a second. All through your life, you make decisions. You know, tiny ones, big ones, whatever. And just before you make that decision, there's a period of uncertainty. Okay? I think the Most High works in that period of uncertainty. It's like having that sealed envelope with the results in. Until it's looked at, it's an uncertain state. Okay? So, all through your life, you've got periods of uncertainty. So, when you ask for that car parking space, that person that's in that car parking space, right, one of those little decisions is like tweaked because you've asked for it, okay? So it might have been something happened 10 years in the past, right, that led him to leave that car parking space just when you arrived. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? I know it's very difficult to get your head around because we're time and space beings and we're used to like the regular flow of time, right? But this is just a different way to look at it, okay? I've done it again, I keep doing it. So, that's Fibonacci sequence I mentioned earlier, right? If you divide each number, right, each two numbers together, right, what you'll get is the results will hover around this number, the 1.618. So 1 divided by 1 divided by 1 is 1, too low. 2 divided by 1, 2, right, too high. Too low, too high, too low, too high, too low, too high, too low, and so on into infinity. It'll never get there, but it's always hovering around this number. Okay, means this number is very, very important, and I've already seen that. So that spiral I showed you earlier, okay, well, that spiral is the basis of all life on this earth, okay? Everything from, hurricanes to what they call, galaxies in the sky to, dandelions and shells and things, they all follow, right? Not only the Fibonacci sequence, but this very special spiral that comes out of the Fibonacci sequence. Even your body follows the same pattern. Yeah, I think if this part of your body is 1, this is 1.618. Okay, and so on. All your proportions are based around this number, which is called the golden ratio, golden mean. Okay, so going back to the Vesica Pisces. So again, if I start, I've got the Vesica Pisces here, right, and it's basically two circles around A and B, okay? If I draw circles around C and D, okay, you get this shape. If I draw circles around, you know, E and F, you suddenly get this shape. And if you start drawing lines between them, what you find is these equilateral triangles, or diamond shapes, yeah? So you get this diamond shape, and inside the diamond shape is another diamond shape. And inside that diamond shape is another diamond shape. And inside that one is another, and so on. But changing orientation each time, okay?
Fractal.
This is what's known as a fractal progression. This will go on forever, okay? Forever inside and forever outside, okay? That's what a fractal is. So I'm going to just show a little video about fractals.
To show you a shape that has some really interesting properties. We can create this special shape by starting with an equilateral triangle, removing the inner third of each side, and then placing another equilateral triangle in the place where the side was removed. If we repeat this process infinitely, we end up with a shape known as a Koch snowflake. And this snowflake is fascinating because although it has a fixed area, it has an infinite perimeter. So how can a shape like this mathematically exist? Well, as the number of generations increases, the area does increase, but less and less each time. At first, the area increases by 1/3 of the original, then 4/27ths, then 16 243rds, then 64 2187ths. You can see how the amount of area added with each successive generation is very quickly trending towards zero. In mathematics, this type of sequence creates what is known as a limit. And what it means in this case is that, although it may intuitively seem like the shape's area will grow infinitely, it actually doesn't. There's a limit to the growth. This chart shows how the shape will never grow beyond 1.6 times its original size when it was just a triangle. And because the shape is limited to this 1.6 value, we can say with certainty that the shape has a fixed and not infinite area. Simply by being able to see this two-dimensional shape in its entirety, we can prove that the area is finite. If the area were infinite, there would be no boundaries to see. And with no boundaries, you really haven't got a two-dimensional shape at all, only a blank, infinite plane. The perimeter is a different story. As the number of generations increases, the perimeter of the snowflake continues to grow and grow without approaching a limit. The math works like this. Each generation of the snowflake has a perimeter exactly 4/3 of the previous generation. If you zoom in and look at just one side of the triangle, it becomes easier to understand. With each generation, the perimeter that is added is 4 times 1/3 of the original length, giving a total growth with each generation of 4/3, or 1.3 recurring. Because this number is greater than 1, the perimeter will continue to increase, trending towards infinity. This is the most non-intuitive aspect of the shape, because it seems as if the perimeter could be measured, but it cannot. Because no matter how far we zoom in on the shape, there would always be more perimeter to measure. And that's how you can mathematically have a shape with a fixed area, but an infinite perimeter.
So, if you start with a very simple rule, and you iterate it over and over and over and over again, you get lots of complexity, okay? And it goes on forever, right? So, if you make that rule a little more complicated, right, you'll come up with something like this. It's called the Mandela set. Okay, I think I have to start this. So, take note of the shape of this kind of beetle thing, yeah? Alright, we're going to see it again. So we're just zooming in on one particular spot on this Mandelbrot set, okay? And again, it's a very simple rule, iterated over and over again. And from it, you're going to get lots and lots of complexity. You're going to get like a whole universe. Okay, and so you're just zooming in on one spot. You could zoom in on the spot next to it and get another infinite universe. Okay? And I'm going to let it play for a little while because I want you to see something very specific. This actually gets very mesmerising. You can actually sit and watch this for hours. Yeah. Again, just a very, very simple rule, just like the last one, yeah, but iterated over and over again. And you can actually zoom out and see the same thing. Again, infinitely zoom out. And I think we're coming up to the part I'm looking for, I think. Okay. No, perhaps not. But you'll see what I mean in a second. There we go. What's that? It's the exact beetle shape again, right? But if you remember, now it's in a different orientation. The other one before was pointing that way, okay? Is that the same one? Is that actually the same one? It's an odd question. But it turns out that these fractals that we can generate mirror what's in our real world, okay? So we can, using the same sort of rule set, we can create what looks like lightning. And if you do a three-dimensional fractal here, it looks exactly like, I think it's called Romanesque, is it cabbage or something? Broccoli. Broccoli, yeah, Romanesque broccoli, yeah. And it also turns out that when a game designer makes a 3D game, he uses fractals to actually generate the scenery, okay? Because, I don't need to talk to him, let the thing tell you. So, this scenery looks very realistic, yeah? But there's no way that a computer can store every single detail of that landscape in memory, yeah? It'd be it would take a massive amount of disk space and it'd be impossible to render real time, yeah? But all this detail is being generated with fractals, okay? Just like that scenery, in that Mandelbrot set, okay? So, when you look at a coastline, for instance, from, 10 miles up, right? Then you look at the same coastline from 5 miles up, then from 1 mile up. It will look roughly the same, okay? Right? This is our world. Our world is built on fractals, okay? Has anybody heard of the coastline paradox? The coastline paradox is, if you were to measure this country, okay, and you had a measuring stick which was 100 kilometers long, right? You can make an approximation of the country, and it might come out at 2,800 kilometers, in perimeter. If you made that measuring stick half the size, 50 kilometers long, you get a more accurate view of the country, but the length now becomes 3,400 kilometers. If you make that measuring stick 100 meters, now you've got a very accurate view of the country, but now the length is 17,000 kilometers. The smaller you make that measuring stick, the more the perimeter it goes towards infinity, okay? And if you think about it, try, making that measuring stick a foot long, yeah, and go down to the beach. How do you measure the country there? Because it's always moving, because there's a waves coming. But even if you go down to make it like a couple of atoms long, right? The atoms, they're always moving. So you can't, it's infinite, you can't actually measure it, okay? So you can have a fixed area but with an infinite perimeter. And also I think you can have the other way round as well. We'll get to that in a little while. There's also no such thing as randomness in this universe, okay? Don't know if anyone's seen this experiment. It's called the ink and glycerin experiment. So you've got a little tub of glycerin, and it's got a handle on the top, and he's just injecting blobs of ink into that glycerin. So he's got 3 blobs of ink now, and he's going to turn that handle 5 times. And it pretty much does what you expect, It's going to smear out and sort of randomize in the glycerin. I didn't keep count, so I think he does it 5 times. Now it's going to turn it back 5 times. You can already guess where it's going with this. So coming up to the 5th turn, and here they come back. Okay? So there is no such thing as randomness, just a deeper level of order. Right? I mean, the same thing would work with water, except there's more variables there. Okay? But even if you drop some, ink in water, it looks like it's randomized, but it's just a deeper level of order that we can't fathom. But if you take some of the variables away, right, using glycerin instead of water, you can see it's not random. So that unlimited energy field of the Most High, plus information about this world, right, results in a kind of structured energy field. Okay, this pattern is very unique. It's called an interference pattern. Right, you'll see that in a second. So the amount of information, how much information is there? Okay, well, it's essentially an infinitely infinite amount. Okay, what do I mean by that? So let's imagine you have a point. Okay, that's 1. So if I added a new dimension, so now we're going to 1 dimension, a line. Well, now that point is infinite. You can have an infinite number of points this way, an infinite number of points that way. So it's 1 times infinity. Okay. So if you add another dimension, right? Now it's 1 infinity times another infinity. Yeah. Get that? Am I losing everybody? Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, every time you add another dimension, so we've gone from 1 dimension to 2, you literally double the infinities. Because we're used to this idea of infinity just being infinity. But if you've got a line, and that's infinite, well, add lots more lines, then that must be more than the previous infinity, necessarily. Okay. If you add another dimension, now we're in 3rd dimension, that's another infinity. 1 times infinity times infinity times infinity. Yeah? So what I'm trying to say is, every time you add a dimension, you add a lot more information. It turns out there is it's not efficient to store information as 1s and 0s. So like we do on magnetic tape and stuff, yeah? There's a type of mathematics called Fourier transforms, which allows you to store enough information, let's say for 3 dimensions, on 2 dimensions. Okay? What that looks like is a hologram. So you've got a 2-dimensional glass plate, and now you're storing enough information for 3 dimensions in that 2-dimensional glass plate. Does that make sense? Yeah? So, here's the thing. Our universe is a hologram. Okay? Because if I can create this with just light, right? The Most High can create this with just light. Okay? So, it's not just a static image that we've got here, right? We have a say in this world. Right? We have an effect on this world. Has anybody come across a double slit experiment? Yeah. The idea is that we put 2 slits, fire a light at it, right? It will give you an interference pattern on the wall. But if you look at the which slit the light goes through, it suddenly turns into 2 lines. You stop looking, it goes back to interference pattern. The act of looking affects the way the light goes. So you've got this, when you've got a holographic plate, when you've got a hologram on that plate, if you look at it without laser light, it will look like this. Doesn't look like anything, just interference patterns. When you put a laser on it, now that 3D pattern pops up, okay? And the thing about a hologram is that if you break off a piece of that hologram, the whole hologram is in the little piece. And if you snap it into a smaller piece, the whole hologram is in that as well. And you keep snapping off, and the whole hologram will be in the tiniest little piece. In everything in this world, the whole universe is in it. So you pick up a grain of sand, the whole universe is in that grain of sand. Okay? That's the way holograms work. Okay? Our reality is essentially a set of static frames of reality. Okay? Like a 3D film strip. Okay? They're static frames. And they're going by so fast that we see them as, smooth movement. Okay? So, where is this movement coming from? Okay? Well, I believe it is the interaction between a higher dimension into this one. Okay? So we're on 3 dimensions. A 4th dimension is interacting with this one. Okay? And we're seeing it as movement. We call that time the 4th dimension. I think it kind of is. So let's take it down to a dimension below. We're looking at flatland, which is 2-dimensional creatures encountering a 3-dimensional object.
Let's look at our square protagonist's world. Flatland is populated by geometric shapes ranging from isosceles triangles to equilateral triangles to squares, pentagons, hexagons, all the way up to circles. These shapes are all scurrying around a flat world, living their flat lives. They have a single eye on the front of their faces, and let's see what the world looks like from their perspective. What they see is essentially one dimension, the line. But in Abbott's flatland, closer objects are brighter, and that's how they see depth. So a triangle looks different from a square, looks different from a circle, and so on. Their brains cannot comprehend the 3rd dimension. In fact, they vehemently deny its existence, because it's simply not part of their world or experience. But all they need, as it turns out, is a little boost. One day, a sphere shows up in Flatland to visit our square hero. Here's what it looks like when the sphere passes through Flatland from the square's perspective. And this blows his little square mind. Then, the sphere lit...
So, as that sphere went through that 2-dimensional world, it was like movement, right? It starts off as a little dot, and as it goes through, it expands, and it gets to its widest point, and then it shrinks again. So if I was to put my hand through that world, what that flat creature would see is, 4 points of 4 circles appear, get wider and wider, then a 5th one will join it, and then they'll merge into an oval shape. Get that? As it goes through. So let's look at these dimensions. So we look at a square in 2 dimensions. Okay, obviously it's a square. A 3 dimensions here is a cube, but we're looking at this on 2 dimensions here, aren't we? Right. So this obviously isn't a cube. This is the shadow of a cube in 3 dimensions. So if I was holding a cube here and the light was shining, it would make this shape on the flat surface here. Yeah. Now this is where it gets very difficult, right? So this shape is a cube, a 4-dimensional cube, but it's a shadow of this 4th dimension. Right? So imagine if I was holding that shape in front of you here, okay? That would be the shadow of a 4th dimension. We can't even imagine what that would look like, right? But we would see the shadow as a 3-dimensional object that was doing that. Does that make sense? Yeah, but that extra dimension, right, looks to us as movement. Okay, so a 4th dimension intersecting with this world looks like movement. Okay, so I know I'm burning people's minds out here, but when you think about all I've said so far, right, especially the holographic part, remember, every piece of the hologram is in every piece. Yeah, the whole hologram is in every piece. So you can do things like this. at some point it's going to look very familiar.
Thank you, JT. Ron Wilson there. Oh, there's Martin. Again.
Space then. Except it's inner space,
Inner space.
not outer space.
The journey. People. Oh, what's that? Look at that. What year was that made, Martin? What year was that made?
So remember, every piece of the hologram contains the whole hologram. Yeah. And we are in a sealed universe.
Yes.
So very similar to what we saw with the Mandelbrot set there. Yeah. That's what we started with, and after zooming in, we got back to that. But hang on, this one's in a bit of a different orientation. Okay. Now, I had a bit of I had a silly idea when I was a child, okay? And when I was putting these slides together, that silly idea came back to me. So, here's the silly idea, okay? So, let's imagine I just built a super whizzy scanning electron microscope, right? And I'm just about to do my first deep dive into a grain of sand, okay? And just before I do it, I get this funny feeling and I go like this. But I don't see anything there and I think, oh, that was weird, that was spooky. And I start my deep dive. And I zoom in and I end up looking at the back of my head. And while I'm looking at the back of my head, he goes, so what I've just done is zoom in to 5 minutes into my past. Okay? But here's the freaky bit. The reason why I looked around in the first place is because 5 minutes in my future, I zoomed into the back of my head. Does that make sense? The whole of time and space is here, right here now, okay? It's hidden in the fractal, right? And our consciousness is literally sort of diving into the fractal and experiencing time that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? So all of time is right here, right now. Okay. It's funny because somebody.
Fractal.
What is that? Is that a helicopter? Get out of here, boy! Okay, they found me. I keep getting these synchronicities. Okay. So when I was talking about this online, and somebody said, you've got to go and watch Interstellar, okay, because the Tesseract scene was exactly what I was talking about. So I decided to look at it, and I found, yes, it is what I was talking about. So I tried to get a screenshot of exactly the right moment I wanted to put into my talk. I kept missing it. So I had the sound down because Matthew McConaughey was going, I thought, no, I can't listen to that audio again. So I turned the sound down, and I noticed that just before that little spot that I wanted to screenshot, Matthew McConaughey just shouts something. So I thought, okay, I'll wait for him to shout, and as soon as he shouts, I'll hit the button. Okay. So I turned the sound up and I waited, and this is what happens. Anyway, he says, Murph! Which is my nickname at school. Right? I was like, did this show just shout at me? But, you know, think about it. Who names a child Murphy? Who? It was like it was set there waiting for me to catch it. Yeah? But literally, and I'm not going to show it all because it's a bit involved, but literally, it shows what I was talking about. That he's being taken into this realm where time is shown as a third dimension. Okay? So, as I said, there's lots of entry points that he could go to. And he's going into one particular moment or in one particular timeline.
Empty.
And that's it, it arrives at a particular moment in the time stream. You notice it was very fractal as he was going down. And now he's just peering at this one point in space and one point in the timeline. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but the whole thing is written right there in this film. So,
Akashic.
again, I'm thinking about where we live, okay? What if we live in a bounded infinity, okay? What if the closer you get to the edge, right, the more you sort of delve into the fractal, the more space contracts, so that you know you literally dive into the fractal. It's like if I'm measuring how far I'm away from this desk. Okay, let's say I wanted to halve the distance. Well, I'll halve it. Okay, what if I halve it again? I'll halve it. And I keep halving it. If I keep doing that, I'll never reach the table, because there's always room for me to halve. Does that make sense? Right? I can keep halving it to infinity. Yeah. What if you imagine that is a road and you're walking up that road, right? It looks like you're going down the road, but you never get to the end. Yeah. What if we're not seeing a dome? What if it's actually like this? Right? But as we look out further, space is contracting, so it looks like it's a dome. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm going over the top with this.
No.
So when we look out into the universe, right, we see that the universe actually looks like brain cells. So what if when we look out into the universe, we're looking at the mind of the Most High from the inside? Yeah? The name of the Most High, right, it says in Exodus, right, Exodus 3:14. God said unto Moses, I am that I am. Yeah? And he said, thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Okay? So his name, in effect, is I am everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah? So, who are you? Well,
You are.
you're not gods, so some people saying that we're gods. No, we're not. Okay? If you imagine Charles Dickens, right? Charles Dickens sits down to write a story. Okay? First of all, he imagines a place, a setting. 19th century London, it's foggy, cobblestones, horses and buggies and that sort of thing. Okay? Then he populates that place with characters. Okay? Gives them self-awareness and free will, and he writes down what they do. Yeah? That's who you are. You are an aspect of the Most High. Your real name and your address is I am here and now. And that's it. Okay. Have I frightened everybody? Have I frightened everybody?
Yes.
That was listening to live.
I know it's a lot to take in, but did I frighten everyone?
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's all very quiet.
It's all very quiet. I know. I know. I think I've scared everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, The mental Dave Murphy. Mental in the fact that I think he's slightly more evolved than most of us at this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions you'd like to ask Dave on any of the stuff he said? Any of the things you're thinking of right now that maybe Dave can answer for you? Anything? Anybody? Hands, please. Lady here in the front.
Yeah, it seemed. Oh.
Sorry, there you go.
Hello. Yeah, it seemed like you were going towards the Schrodinger's cat theory at one point, and I wondered if you were going to expand on that at all, because I watched an amazing play about Schrodinger's cat, and it blew my mind. The idea that you don't know until you open the box. It could be either. It could be anything. It could be dead or alive.
Exactly. Well, for those who don't know, Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment where you have a cat in a box, and in that box is a little sort of device that might trip and it might not. And if it trips, it will release poison gas and kill the cat. Okay. So while the cat's in the box, the cat is in an undetermined state. It's neither dead or alive, and it only resolves when you open the box and have a look. Okay, it's very much similar to the double slit experiment. Yeah, it only gets resolved when you look at it. Right. Well, and that is what I think is really going on. I think this world is okay. It is a construct, but it's a self-aware construct. And we are creatures that were created as creators, okay, in the image of the Most High.
Yes.
Yeah? So we, in the image of the Most High, we can affect the experience we have down here.
Even you, Mod.
Okay? It's very difficult to get a mindset around, because we've been poisoned mentally and physically. We've been disabled, essentially. Okay. An example: telepathy, for instance. How many of you remember my example about Paleo Hebrew? How many hands? Anybody? Okay. All right. For those who haven't, I'm gonna give you the example for those who haven't seen it. Okay. So, I'm going to describe a film to you. Okay. And you're gonna have to guess what the film is. I'm going to describe it to you in English. A man on the autistic spectrum recounts his life to strangers. What's the film? Rain Man. Any other guesses?
No, it's Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Anything else? Hello? Anything else? Alright, so Rain Man and Forrest Gump. Right, so what happened there, in the left hand side of your brain, right, you listen to the sounds I was making, right, you fetch the meanings that you were taught at school, and you compared that list of meanings to a list of films you'd seen, and you guessed at Forrest Gump and Rain Man. Right, so I'm not going to tell if you're right. I'm going to give you the same film in Paleo Hebrew. Now, Paleo Hebrew is a language of pictures. It's actually the original language of mankind, right? So little pictograms that mean something to the ancient Hebrew. So I'm going to use emojis, right? So shout out when you know it, okay? Right. Man running, a few trees, a park bench, a box of chocolates, a shrimp, and a boat. What's the film?
Forrest Gump.
What's the film?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Right, in that case, the left-hand side of your brain couldn't get involved because it can't analyse pictures. It can analyse language, but not pictures. Okay? So you were imaging the pictures as you were listening to my voice, right? And you knew what the film was. There was no guesswork. It just welled up. Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There was no guesswork whatsoever. Okay. Now that was how our original language worked. It's intuitive. Every word means what it means. That set of pictures can't mean Rain Man. Okay. I didn't have to spell it either. I could put it in any order. You'd have still got it. Right. It was intuitive. You intuitively knew what it meant. Right. So we originally did not think in words. We used to think in pictures. Okay? That was our natural language. Now telepathy isn't hearing what somebody else is thinking. It's not hearing words. It is seeing what the other person means. Pictures. Okay? Now, if you really think about it, those times when you've had sort of shared telepathy, it was about a picture. You had a mental picture of what it was, and somebody picked up on it. Okay? So, anybody experienced something that like telepathy?
See what I mean?
Yeah, you see what somebody means. It's right in the words. Okay? I did this experiment when I was doing, I've got a talk called Telepathy in the Complete Human. And when I was working on the talk, I did a little experiment with my wife. I said, right, I want you to think of an emotional event that happened in her life. And as soon as I finished talking, I knew what it was. Again, it was a picture, and she said it was when my daughter spilled coffee or something on her leg and burnt it, got 3rd-degree burns. Right? But it wasn't that. It was a car ride to the hospital. That was what she was thinking, and I got that picture. I knew it straight away. Okay, it wasn't words; it was pictures. So that's why we can't do it, because we've been disabled in this society with these weird languages. Okay, so I've gone off the topic a bit, but the point is that we are creators in this world. We've been disabled, and how we affect the world is that we collapse uncertainties because of what we request. We put some thought out there, and that thought has to turn into reality. As soon as you think of something, really, if you focus on something, right, it has to come into fruition in some form or another. Okay, and that act of focusing on something collapses, a waveform somewhere, which leads to that thing coming into fruition. Right? It's that uncertainty. All works in the uncertainty. Right? Does that make any sense?
Can I add
Have it back.
Because, I mean, I don't want to be controversial here, because I am the biggest flat earther since 2015. But it would make sense then that we are all creating our reality, and our reality is that the earth is flat. But if you have the reality that the earth is round, then everything will support that. And then if someone comes along and tells you, well, actually there's loads of evidence that it's flat, then that is competing with your reality, and so you're gonna attack that person. But their reality is just as full of proof as our reality.
Right, but their reality is based on, right?
Lies. It seems to us, yes, it seems like lies and
but it is
demonic.
lies. We know, right? We can prove that they're lying to us. Okay.
Yeah, we can. But that is our reality. It's proof that I mean, it's so obvious to us that they're lying to us. But for them, they can't even see that. And their whole reality supports that. It's a more innocent worldview.
Yes. But, we can be fooled, can't we? Yeah? Especially by...
But we're living the reality of being fooled. And they're living a reality where they're not being fooled.
We're not.
We're not living that reality. We're flat earthers. We're not living.
No, I'm sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Right. So they are living a reality where for us they're being fooled, but for them they're living in a more innocent reality where there isn't this evil, demonic,
because they've
lying.
chosen to live that reality. All the information that we find, is available to them too.
But
Just
maybe
like
there's
COVID.
two realities. There's infinite realities.
No, this is the thing.
There's a
Everything
massive
is out
element
there.
of brainwashing.
I would be first to agree, because I was
Andrew's about to kick off.
Trump supporter for a few years, and then now I'm not anymore because
You've got more information.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Can I just say as well, with the reality creation, for those of us, in my opinion, okay,
Sit on your chair.
if we are awake specifically to where we are, the flat earth, we have a different vibrational frequency to other truthers, I believe. When you create a reality, you try and live through that reality. When the people are not awake, it's very easy for the powers that be to make their reality be done through those people that don't get it. they create the reality for them. That's what I honestly think. So people who are not awake, the people who are fearful, the people that believe the government, etc., whatever, those are the ones that create the reality that we all live in, but we stand apart from that because we recognise that's their reality. That's honestly what I think.
Yeah, there is an objective reality, you know, created with certain rules, but we can bend those rules. We can, you know, literally, if anyone's come across Rupert Sheldrake and morphic resonance, essentially, you know, things are impossible until somebody does it, and then it's less impossible for the next person, right? It's like if there's a impenetrable forest between, you know, two cities, right, and everyone's forced to walk around, right? That one person tries to hack through, right? He might not make it the first time, but the second time he hacks all the way through to the other city. The next person coming along will go, oh, looks like a path through there, and they'll try and get through, and they'll find it easier to get through, and then that sort of path becomes a road. And then that road becomes the M25, and nobody can get through it, yeah?
Have we got another question here?
I get what you say about the pictures and the words being constructed and not natural. But what you've explained today, which I understand a little bit, was explained with numbers. I mean, is that what we should really be thinking in, or are numbers constructed, or... I'm probably going off on one here.
Right. Well, the numbers are there to show that this is a mathematically created universe. Right? If this was the way that we were told this universe is, you know, accident, a big bang, right? There wouldn't be a mathematical symmetry to everything, right? As you saw, every aspect of 3D reality is based on, you know, a sequence of numbers. Yeah, everything, you know, the way the leaves appear on that tree is according to the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, the way you're shaped is according to everything. It means that somebody has organised this place, right? And again, as co-creators of it, right, we can have an effect on it. We are an aspect of the Most High, you know, in His image. So just as He can create this world, we can co-create it.
So He sort of created the numbers, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think I get it. It's part of intelligent design.
Yes.
So the numbers are sort of basic, the mathematics is basic.
Well, you saw, I went from, you know, again, this was the Most High exploring Himself. There's nothing else to explore. So he was thinking, okay, well, I'm all there is. Well, what if there was something else? And what if that thing was, you know, this distance away? Ooh, distance, that's interesting. And, okay, so where can, you know, with this distance thing, where else can it be? Oh, it could be here. Oh, hang on, that's a circle. Ooh, oh, I can draw another circle around this one. And so on. You can see it's like an exploration of himself.
Yeah,
right, resulting in this place.
Excellent. Anybody else want to... oh, we got one over there. Hold on. I feel like Annika Ross without the bum. Ben.
You said about the Fibonacci sequence and how it creates every part of our bodies, right? Mm-hmm. So how does that work with dogs, though? So obviously your dogs are part of the Fibonacci sequence as well, but they're yeah, like everything. But I mean, dogs are very, very, very like they're very interwoven with us, with humans, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so how are they different to other animals? How is it?
Well, I'm not sure you're asking what I'm thinking, but there is a one difference between a wolf and a dog. Does anyone know what that difference is? Collar? No. Human DNA. Look it up, right? A dog has human DNA, a wolf doesn't. Okay? So it puts a different spin on man's best friend. Is that true? It is. Yeah, look it up. So dogs are designed around the Fibonacci sequence as well. Everything is. Okay? Again, everything in this physical world, right, is, you know, the 3D physical world comes down to the platonic solids. And again, just exploring the world in drawing circles, it builds those platonic solids. Okay, and in those platonic solids is this fractal effect, which you know, you can zoom in and you can see, you know, these dualities in each solid. Yeah.
Are you talking?
So yeah, this is a deliberately created place, which means we are deliberately created. Yeah, we know that because of being flat earthers. Yeah, we know that means that we are important. We are unique.
Yeah.
Every life on this earth is unique and important.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, there's a lot of debate out there about, you know, whether this is a, you know, intentionally created place. I think the numbers and what this sequence of events that I showed you proves that this was intelligently designed by an intelligent creator.
Oh yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
sorry. And the fractals is sort of like simulation theory, that sort of thing. No.
Say that again.
Sorry. So where does the simulation theory come into it then?
Well, simulation theory is essentially ascribing a man-made process to the Most High's process. Yeah. Yes, it, you know, from that point of view, it is a simulation, because it is kind of, but it's not, you know, created by man. Though saying that, it could be. We could create something like that, and I believe they have something called the Real World Simulator, where every one of us is, you know, modelled in this simulation, and it's fed by all the data that we put on, like Facebook and you know, online. All that information gets fed into this simulation of ourselves. I'd like to see that, but you know, apparently that exists.
Sweet Caroline. You did a picture of the flat Earth with the dome,
Yeah.
which I believe it was, with the dome, and then you confused me with the picture of the Earth with the other diagram.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I like this idea, right, that that we can never get to the edge, because, you know, as we go close to the edge, we're diving into the fractal. Yeah, space is contracting, and we're literally going, and the universe is just creating more for us to see. Yeah, if that was the case, if, you know, the space itself was contracting into a fractal, then from the centre of this place, it would look like, you know, it would look like a dome. I'm just saying, I don't know, I'm just throwing that one out there. But, you know, if that was the case, if you can't get to the edge because essentially you're diving into the fractal as you're approaching it, then it would look like it was a dome. That's all I mean.
Lovely job, Dave. We have a question. Hold your horses.
I always thought that space, what we call space, yeah, to me, is spiritual. It's just made up of spiritualness. Is that kind of sort of what you're saying as well?
Well, again, I'm one of those who don't believe space exists, but
in the universe.
Right, I think that this place is a bubble of 3D space and time. That's it. There is nothing beyond it, because that would mean more 3D space and time. I think, you know, outside of it, which would be a different dimension, right, there is no space and time. Space and time only happens here. In my other talk, I say that, you know, when we leave this place, right, it's the same time as when we entered, because space and time only happens here. So the thing that's you, is not actually here. Your body's here, but your signal entered here and then it leaves. Okay? So the moment it enters is the same moment it leaves, from the perspective of outside of here. No space and time. Yeah? So, you know, enter in, have a blip of 120 years or whatever, and then we're back out the same moment we entered. Okay, and the story is we go to judgment straight there. The counterpoint is the wicked and the Nephilim, when they die, and this is in the Book of Enoch, when they die, their spirits are trapped here as disembodied spirits. Okay, and so they're cursed to wander the earth until the end of time. Okay, so that could be 1,000 years, could be 10,000 years. 10,000 years as a disembodied spirit, watching everyone else having a great
I'm
time
running out of
and not
battery.
being able to partake. It's like there could be one here going, oh, I'd love a beer. Yeah. That is hell. Hell is